friends! Today let's dive into The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid is a very important movie to me as it helped spark my love of all things ocean.
There it is. Isn't it fantastic?
But when I watched it recently, a question popped into my head. How deep is Atlantica? As some of you know, divers use depth gauges to tell us how deep we are when we're underwater. But there are other ways of figuring out how deep you are, and by using some of these techniques, we can figure out how deep Atlantica actually is. One of the first things that new divers learn about depth and water is the deeper you go, the less light you can see, and therefore the less colours you see. This is because water particles will absorb light particles, and so the more water there is, the less light you can see. As you go deeper, you lose red at around 5 meters, 15 feet, orange at 10 meters, 30 feet, yellow at 20 meters, 65 feet, green at 30 meters, 100 feet, and then finally blue at around 60 meters, 200 feet. Which means once you're relatively deep at around 30 to 40 meters, most of what you see is all blue, which is why my diving photos look like this until I've retouched them to look like this. However, this technique doesn't actually help us to determine depth within the movie, as no matter where Ariel is in the water column, her hair is always a beautiful bright red, when in reality it should look like this. The lack of colour change could be due to the fact that we could be watching the movie through some coloured lens to correct for it, or through the eyes of another sea creature like a mermaid, who would have maybe some colour correcting lenses or something, or cells in their eyes so that they can still see. Or maybe the animators just wanted to keep it colourful. Having ruled out the use of colour to determine depth, there is another pretty accurate way of determining how deep you are. If you know the waters that you're diving in, you know what local organisms live there, and most organisms will only live at certain depths. So, by looking around and looking at the different fish or corals or whatever is around you, you can get a pretty good estimate as to how deep you are. Let's take the under the sea scene. There's a lot of colourful and tropical looking fish and corals in this scene, which tells us that we're in tropical waters, which I know very well. This scene has a lot of life in it. There's loads of different fish and corals and soft corals, and there's even some nudibranches. This tells me that we're likely at around 20 meters, 65 feet deep. Next, let's look at Ariel's grotto. There's a lot less life here than the under the sea scene, and it's a lot less colourful, but there's just about enough information there to tell us that we're around 30 to 40 meters or 100 to 130 feet deep. This leads us to Atlantica. It's very blue down there, and there isn't really much life except for a little bit of seaweed. We do see one soft coral, which, if you're interested, to me looks like it's probably a lobophyton. But this one soft coral really doesn't help us determine depth. Soft corals can be found as deep as 200 meters or 650 feet. However, none of the mermaids seem very different when they're seen at Atlantica or when they're seen at the surface. Fish, or any animals really that live in the deep sea, get a bit blobby when they're on the surface, just due to the lack of pressure on their bodies. This tells us that Atlantica cannot be at the 200 meter depth mark. Also, though it is quite dark around Atlantica, it's not nearly dark enough for it to be at 200 meters. In fact, it's not even dark enough to be at the 100 meter mark. Considering the light levels and the organisms present, or the lack thereof of organisms, I would put Atlantica at around 60 to 70 meters or 200 to 230 feet deep. This is because the tallest building of Atlantica seems to be about 20 to 25 meters tall, and there would need to be enough room between the top of the building and the surface of the water for Atlantica to not be seen from the surface. Have you ever been diving? If so, where was your favourite dive destination, or where would you like to go diving next? Please tell me in the comment section down below. Also, please leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I hope you consider subscribing. Until next time, happy bubbles!